Welcome to Making Stuff, actually in this case circuit boards, with Chris Dayhut. Today's video we're going to go over the process of doing the tinning operation and the painting of the top surface. Within that we also have to very carefully clean and deburr or sand the circuit board. All of these combined make for an excellent looking product in the end. Now we're going to start the process of some of the finishing operations. We're going to sand the edges so they're not sharp. I'll polish the copper side. I'll rough up the back side so the paint adheres better. We'll apply the liquid tin. We'll rinse it off in water. We'll thoroughly wash it several times using isopropyl alcohol. I've also used acetone. Sanding, just a sanding sponge, and then an abrasive pad to do some polishing. Once we get it to a point where it's all sanded, I'll be putting on rubber gloves and then start the cleaning process. I just hold the sanding block. This is a sponge type sanding block. I just hold it at an angle, give it a few strokes on each of the edges, like so. And that usually takes off that sharp edge. Just makes it a little bit nicer for when we're handling it during soldering and assembly, etc. Purely an optional step. Now I can feel it, no sharp edges, and I like that. Now I want to polish this surface a little bit, and an abrasive pad works really well. And then I'll do the top side just to give a little better adhesion for the paint. And that's about all I do on sanding and polishing. Now I'm going to generously apply some isopropyl alcohol and clean both sides of the circuit board really good. We want to make sure there are no contaminants on there in the form of oils, especially from fingers. That's why the rubber gloves are so important. And from the machining process, especially if you used a cutting oil. But do your best to get it clean at this point, and you'll end up with a better painted finish and tinned surface. The liquid tin that I'm using is by MG Chemicals. They're a large supplier of a lot of chemicals and products that we use in electronics work and in other industries. You do want to read very carefully the warning instructions. You would think this stuff was nuclear waste or something, so read it carefully and follow that as they're indicating. Using it's quite simple. We're going to pour it into a plastic container. I'll set the PCB in there. If it's double-sided, I would usually put a couple of small objects in there, a couple of tiny pieces of wire or something to elevate it from the bottom surface. We'll put that in there. We'll let it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes. We'll pull it out, rinse it off in warm water. After all that's done, usually I reclaim the solution back into the bottle and keep reusing it until it's no longer useful. This particular bottle's probably 5 years old, maybe even older, so it's had a number of circuit boards pass through the solution in that time frame. That'll sit in there for about 3 to 5 minutes, and you should see it turn from the copper color to more of a silver color during that time. After the required time, I take the PCB out of the liquid tin solution, put it into a bin of lukewarm water, rinse it off thoroughly, dry it up, and we end up with a nice looking circuit board that is tinned, so it'll take solder much easier than the bare copper will. And we are now ready for the final finishing process, which will be to put a paint on this surface. Then we'll engrave the legends or the lettering into it. Now the surface at this point has just been scuffed up a little bit with an abrasive cloth and then cleaned thoroughly. Now you'll notice I'm touching it with bare hands again, so I'll do another cleaning with the isopropyl alcohol, and then we'll use an airbrush to spray on a thin coating. At this point, I've cleaned up the circuit board again with alcohol. I don't want paint getting on the surface that's tinned, so I'm going to mask that off like so. And then I'm also going to fashion a little handle out of a piece of folded over tape, so that I can hold it and spray paint it. Like that. That's ready for paint. I need to select a color, and I think today we're going with semi-gloss black, alcohol-based Tamiya color acrylic paint. Basic modeling paint. I have plenty of that around. This won't take a lot. I've already shaken this up and stirred it, so I'm just going to use a dropper, get a little bit, turn on my paint booth to get rid of some of the fumes. And as the saying goes, a couple of light coats is always better than one heavy coat. I'll let that dry, put another coat on in a few minutes. I think 2 coats will be fine. We'll let this dry a little bit more, then we can move on to engraving. Well, I gotta say, I really like the looks of it. The tinning was a little thin here, but otherwise it is covered on all the pads. Over on the painted side, I've got a nice matte or semi-gloss painted surface there that's very dark. So that should really emphasize the engraving that we're going to do in the next video. Hopefully you picked up some tips along the way for tinning and for painting the top surface. As you see, it requires very little work to do, but will yield great results in your final product. With that, I think we'll wrap up today's video. In the next video, we're going to engrave the top surface, and a very important trick is involved in that so that we get good alignment between the first operation where we isolation milled it and the top surface where we're going to do the engraving. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And if you could be so kind, I would really appreciate it if you could give me a like, a thumbs up, share the video with others, put a comment down below, or subscribe. See you next time.